FBI before the meeting occurred that he had this contact. What's notable is that President Trump later stood in direct contradiction with his own FBI director and said he wasn't sure that he would have made that call. And it was a real shocking moment for many people in Washington because the understanding is there's some feet at the elbow here, and when you are required to call, generally it's not a crime not to call when someone has contacted you. But the overwhelming view of the FBI, the CIA, the NSA is you need to call us when you have that type of contact.
One other key thing will have to do with that Trump Tower meeting that occurred with Russian officials, and later was then, once it was reported and questions raised about what was discussed, the president himself editing a statement, directing others to change a public statement about what was said in that Trump Tower meeting.
Two issues there. One, that was a statement to the New York Times. The Trump administration and its lawyers have always said there's no crime in lying to the New York Times or anyone else. Point two, that was not Russian officials. It was a lawyer who said she was working on behalf of people with interest in the Russian government. It's a key distinction. One of the things that also came out this morning is that that same lawyer then met with Glenn Simpson, Fusion GPS, after that Trump Tower meeting. Republicans would say, why didn't you include that? That would at least be contextually relevant or possibly interesting to who she meeting with both sides. Was this something that should be part of the public record? I think it's a fair question. It's a fair question.
Yeah. Well, and we're just showing you now, these are actually, we're waiting now for the former special counsel Robert Mueller, the former FBI director, to come through this door to appear before these members of the House Intel Committee, which have been, of course, investigating this whole thing for a couple of years themselves, in addition to the special counsel.
I just want to highlight a word that Mr. Mueller used multiple times, and that is the word integrity. So there are two questions here. One is is action going to produce an indictment and put someone in jail? That's the criminal law. The other question is, do we want our public servants to act with integrity? These are norms. They're not enforceable. These are ways of conduct. We teach our children. We act in our own lives. And I think that, in addition to whether or not there's a question of whether that was illegal to not call the FBI, do we want someone in a position of power to take that step rather than say, hey, this is good for me, even though the Russians are bad guys, so I'm going to keep this quiet? That's a question of integrity.
We're seeing Republicans pressing one point very hard, and they're going to say, look, in the Steele dossier, they received information allegedly from foreign intelligence, including the Russians. And you had a lot of information that was going to Steele or to the so-called Clinton side. You didn't investigate any of that. So you said you wanted to look at the influence of Russians on the investigation, and it only seemed to be on one side. Mueller refused to answer that, and he had a good reason for that. Because he said, look, that will be part of the other investigation going forward.
Well, he suggested that the Department of Justice is looking at it right now.
That is right.
Yeah.
And so I think he's going to maintain that. The Republicans are also going to jump on the fact that in the Mueller report, it does not find that Trump knew about the meeting in advance. And that was a key moment for the Republicans.
Now, the Robert Mueller, I just want to point out just before we start this, has brought in some reinforcements today. His top aide, former chief of staff when he was FBI director, the man who helped run a lot of the special counsel operations, Aaron Zebley, is going to be sworn in today. So I want to bring in Nancy Cordes to explain what that means for what we're going to see for the second hearing. Nancy?
Switching sides.
Nora, Aaron Zebley was Mueller's chief of staff. He was responsible for the day-to-day operations of this investigation over the course of 2 years. And so Mueller made an unusual last-minute request of these two committees that Zebley be able to not just advise him at the witness stand, but be sworn in himself, so that if there were very specific questions that Mueller couldn't answer, that Zebley would be able to pick that up. Well, the first committee, the Judiciary Committee, declined. They said it was a last-minute protocol that they wanted to hear from Mueller and only from Mueller, and so Zebley was there in the hearing room, but he himself didn't testify. This next hearing is different. He will be sworn in, and that's potentially because there are so many questions that are going to be really getting into the nitty-gritty of Russian interference, and these respondents believe that in some cases Zebley might be the person who is better equipped to answer questions about specific interviews with individuals, whether they're foreign nationals or Americans, and so he will be able to speak. Not everyone is happy about this. I'm sure that several Republicans who said, look, we've been preparing for weeks. We were prepared to question Robert Mueller, not Aaron Zebley. It is going to happen in the House Intelligence Committee. The president himself, one of the people who is railing against this decision, said it's unfair.
why Aaron Zebley is being brought into this. And people were frustrated by Robert Mueller that he did not answer many of the questions in the first hearing. In fact, we counted some 110 months allowed yes or no answers. This is an attempt, I think, to provide more context to this very important issue. And as you see now, that's why the director taking his seat there, along with Aaron Zebley, also a noted prosecutor, also a former partner at Wilmer Hale as well.
And you can expect Zebley is going to have a harder time here. He was already attacked once in the earlier hearing because he had a connection to the IT controversy involving the Clintons. Here, I think since he'll be under oath, the Republicans could very well go after him as one of the figures that they have been suggesting might be biased.
Worth pointing out, no conspiracy with the 2016 campaign and the Trump campaign. Numerous contacts that were ritualistically denied until they were forced out into the public record. And no evidence that the Trump campaign at any level discouraged Russians from cooperate talking to them. Is America comfortable with those three sets of facts? That's the right set of questions.
And now we're going to hear from Adam Schiff, a former prosecutor himself, who is the chairman of this committee.
We will come to order.
Mission objectives green across the board.
Oh my God. Kill it.
At the outset, and on behalf of my colleagues, I want to thank you, Special Counsel Mueller, for a lifetime of service to the country. Your report, for those who've taken the time to study it, is methodical and it is devastating. For it tells the story of a foreign adversary's sweeping and systematic intervention in a close U.S. presidential election. That should be enough to deserve the attention of every American, as you well point out. But your report tells another story as well. The story of the 2016 election is also a story about disloyalty to country, about greed, and about lies. Your investigation determined that the Trump campaign, including Donald Trump himself, knew that a foreign power was intervening in our election and welcomed it, built Russian meddling into their strategy, and used it. Disloyalty to country. Those are strong words, but how else are we to describe a presidential campaign which did not inform the authorities of a foreign offer of dirt on their opponent, which did not publicly shun it or turn it away, but which instead invited it, encouraged it, and made full use of it? That disloyalty may not have been criminal. Constrained by uncooperative witnesses, the destruction of documents, and the use of encrypted communications, your team was not able to establish each of the elements of the crime of conspiracy beyond a reasonable doubt. So not a provable crime in any event. But I think maybe something worse. A crime is a violation of law written by Congress. But disloyalty to country violates the very oath of citizenship. Our devotion to a core principle was founded that we, the people, and not some foreign power that wishes us ill, we decide who governs us. This is also a story about money, about greed and corruption, about the leadership of the campaign willing to compromise the nation's interests, not only to win, but to make money at the same time. About a campaign chairman indebted to pro-Russian interests who tried to use his position to clear his debts and make millions. About a national security advisor using his position to make money from still other foreign interests. And about a candidate trying to make more money than all of them put together. A real estate project that to him was worth a fortune. Hundreds of millions of dollars, and the realization of a lifelong ambition, a Trump Tower in the heart of Moscow. A candidate who, in fact, viewed his whole campaign as the greatest infomercial in history. Donald Trump and his senior staff were not alone in their desire to use the election to make money. For Russia, too, there was a powerful financial motive. Putin wanted relief from U.S. economic sanctions imposed in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine and over human rights violations. The secret Trump Tower meeting conversations between Flynn and the Russian ambassador were about sanctions. Trump and his team wanted more money for themselves, and the Russians wanted more money for themselves and for their oligarchs. But the story doesn't end here either. For your report also tells a story about lies. Lots of lies. Lies about a gleaming tower in Moscow and lies about talks with the Kremlin. Lies about the firing of FBI Director James Comey and lies about efforts to fire you, Director Mueller, and lies to cover it up. Lies about secret negotiations with the Russians over sanctions and lies about WikiLeaks. Lies about polling data and lies about hush money payments. Lies about meetings in the Seychelles to set up secret back channels and lies about a secret meeting in New York Trump Tower. Lies to the FBI, lies to your staff, and lies to this committee. Lies to obstruct an investigation into the most serious attack on our democracy by a foreign power in our history. That is where your report ends, Director Mueller. With a scheme to cover up, obstruct, and deceive every bit as systematic and pervasive as the Russian disinformation campaign itself, but far more pernicious since this rot came from within. Even now, after 448 pages and 2 volumes, the deception continues. The President and his acolytes say your report found no collusion, though your report explicitly declined to address that question, since collusion can involve both criminal and non-criminal conduct. Your report laid out multiple offers of Russian help to the Trump campaign and campaign's acceptance of that help, and overwhelming furtherance of Russian help. The most important thing is the very definition of collusion, whether it is a crime or not.
How much money is it?
Evidence of obstruction. You outlined numerous actions
exactly like if he did one house,
to obstruct the investigation.
$4,000 now, you got split it with somebody, take shit. Pay you to work.
Didn't they have to buy their equipment?
I mean,
In fact, they say your whole investigation
came out like
that the Russians didn't interfere in our election, that it's all a terrible.
But he talking about what he made like
the real crime, they
22,000.
say, is not that the Russians intervened to help Donald Trump,
We're in the wrong business.
but that the FBI had its American to investigate when they did. But worst of all, worse than all the lies and the greed is the disloyalty to country. For that too continues. When asked if the Russians intervene again, will you take their help, Mr. President? Why not? Was the essence of his answer.
I just want one, baby.
Everyone does it.
They said these from the company.
No, Mr. President.
The dude got popped. He
They don't.
got the box and everything.
Not in the America envisioned by Jefferson, Madison, and Hamilton. Not for those who believe in the idea that Lincoln labored until his dying day to preserve. The idea animating our great national experiments, so unique then, so precious still, that our government is chosen by our people through our franchise and not by some hostile foreign power. This is what is at stake. Our next election and the one after that, for generations to come, our democracy. This is why your work matters, first of all. This is why our investigation matters. Bring these dangers to light. Ranking Member Hicks. Welcome everyone to the last gasp.
But I can benefit. I got 401k.
The Democrats voicing the spectacle of America, as well as you, Mr. Warren.
I do that too.
The American people may recall the media began spreading this conspiracy
He do that too. His first move should be go to
Fusion
jail.
GPS funded by the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign.
You know, that's somebody whoop his ass.
Still intoxicated.
He barely got work.
Collection of outlandish accusations that Trump
He paid motherfuckers
were Russian
for the
agents.
job he was done.
Fusion GPS, Steele, and other Confederates fed these absurdities to naive or partisan reporters.
He gave Uncle his money.
And to top officials from numerous government agencies, including the FBI,
So who did
Department
work?
of Justice, and
Mind you, this
State
work,
Department.
they still got to do it.
Among other things, the FBI used dossier allegations to obtain a warrant to
Wait a minute, they ain't done with the job and they got the man money and split it up and
Despite
everything?
acknowledging dossier allegations as
Still got these man
salacious
roots?
and unverified, former FBI Director James Comey briefed those allegations to President Obama and President-elect Trump. Those briefings conveniently leaked to the press, resulting in the publication of the dossier launching thousands of false press stories based on the word of a foreign ex-spy. One who admitted he was desperate to try to lose the election and who was eventually fired as an FBI source for leaking to the press. After Comey himself was fired by his own admission, he leaked derogatory information on President Trump to the press for the specific purpose, and successfully so, of engineering the appointment of the special counsel who sits here. 2019, when the Special Counsel's Office.
How much did these cost?
Both Mr. Mueller and Mr. Zebley will be available to answer questions today. It will be consistent with the rules of the House and committee. Mr. Mueller and Mr. Zebley's appearance today before the committee is in keeping with the committee's long-standing practice of receiving testimony from current or former Department of Justice and FBI personnel regarding matters. As this hearing is under oath, and before we begin your testimony, Mr. Mueller and Zebley, would you please rise and raise your right hands?
No, they use your own song.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give at this hearing is the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Thank you. The record will reflect that the witnesses have been duly sworn. Ranking Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to clarify.
That's the same nigga?
This is unusual for Mr. Zebley.
Oh, different motherfuckers?
Sworn in.
Oh, they going up the branch.
Asked Director Mueller questions. He's here as counsel. Our side's not going to be directing any questions to Mr. Zebley. And we have concerns about his prior representation of the Hillary Clinton campaign aid. So I just want to voice that concern that we do have. We will not be addressing those questions today.
I thank the ranking member. I realize, as you probably knew, Mr. Zebley, that there is a angry man down the street who's not happy about your being here today. But it is up to this committee and not anyone else who will be allowed to be sworn in and testify. And you are welcome as a private citizen to testify, and members may direct their questions to whoever they choose. With that, Director Mueller, you are recognized for any opening remarks you'd like to make.
Good afternoon, Chairmanship.
Let's go! Let's get it! Shut up! If I talk to you. Shut up! Got the fuck out!
Be incorporated into the record.
That sounds good.
I understand that this committee has a unique jurisdiction, that you are interested in further understanding the counterintelligence implications of our investigation. So let me say a word about how we handle the potential impact of our investigation on counterintelligence matters.
Make them count.
As we explained in our report, the special counsel regulations effectively the routing of the United States Attorney. As a result, we structured our investigations around evidence for possible use in prosecution of federal crimes. We did not reach what you would call counterintelligence conclusions. We did, however, start the process in our office to identify and pass counterintelligence information onto the FBI. Members of our office periodically brief the FBI about counterintelligence information. In addition, there were agents and analysts from the FBI who were not on our team, but whose job it was to identify counterintelligence information in their files and to disseminate that information to the FBI. For these reasons, questions about what the FBI has done with the counterintelligence information obtained from our investigation should be directed to the FBI. I also want to reiterate a few points that I made this morning. I am not making any judgments or offering opinions about the guilt or innocence in any case. It is unusual for a prosecutor to testify about a criminal investigation. Given my role as a prosecutor, there are reasons. First, public testimony could affect several ongoing matters. Some of these matters, court rules or judicial orders, limit the disclosure of information to protect the fairness of the proceedings. And consistent with long-standing justice and private policy, it would be inappropriate for me to comment in any way that could affect an ongoing matter. Second, the Justice Department has asserted privileges concerning investigative information and decisions, ongoing matters within the Justice Department, and deliberations within our office. These are Justice Department privileges that I will respect. Department letter discussing the restrictions on my testimony. I therefore will not be able to answer questions about certain areas that I know are of public interest. For example, I am unable to address questions about the opening of the FBI's Russian investigations, which occurred months before my appointment, or matters related to the so-called steel DusSe Up. These matters are the subject of ongoing review by the department. Any questions on these topics should therefore be directed to the FBI or the Justice Department. Third, as I explained this morning, it is important for me to adhere to what we wrote in our report. The report contains our findings, analysis, and the reasons for the decisions we made. We stated the results of our investigation with precision. We do not intend to summarize or describe the results of our work in a different way in the course of my testimony today. As I stated in May, I also will not comment on the actions of the Attorney General or Congress. I was appointed as a prosecutor, and I intend to adhere to that role and to the department's standards that govern. Finally, as I said this morning, over the course of my career, I've seen a number of challenges to our democracy. The Russian government's efforts to interfere in our election is among the most serious. I am sure that the committee has prepared this morning. Before we go to questions, I want to add one correction to my testimony this morning. I want to go back to one thing that was said this morning by Mr. Liu. He said, and I quote, "You didn't charge the president because of the OLC opinion." That is not the correct way to say it. As we say in the report, and as I said in the opening, we did not reach a determination as to whether the president committed a crime. And with that, question.
Thank you, Director Mueller. I recognize myself for 5 minutes. Director Mueller, your report describes a sweeping and systematic effort by Russia to influence our presidential election. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And during the course of this Russian interference in the election, the Russians made outreach to the Trump campaign, did they not?
That occurred over the course of, yeah, that occurred.
It's also clear from your report that during that Russian outreach to the Trump campaign, no one associated with the Trump campaign ever called the FBI to report it. Am I right?
I don't know that for sure.
Good job.
In fact, the campaign welcomed the Russian help, did they not?
I think we have a report in the report indications that that occurred. Yes.
President's son said when he was approached about dirt on Hillary Clinton that the Trump campaign would love it.
That is generally what we say, yes.
The president himself called on the Russians to hack Hillary's emails.
There was a statement by the president and those general lines.
And numerous times during the campaign, the president praised the releases of the Russian-hacked emails through WikiLeaks.
That did occur.
Your report found that the Trump campaign planned, quote, a press strategy, communications campaign, and messaging, unquote, based on that Russian assistance.
I have not heard that.
That language comes from Volume 1, page 54. Apart from the Russians wanting to help Trump win, several individuals associated with the Trump campaign were also trying to make money during the campaign and transition. Is that correct? That's true. While Manafort was trying to make money or achieve debt forgiveness from a Russian oligarch.
Generally, that is that.
Michael Flynn was trying to make money from Turkey.
True.
Donald Trump was trying to make millions from a real estate deal in Moscow.
You said you're talking about the hotel in Moscow?
Yes.
Yes.
When your investigation looked into these matters, numerous Trump associates lied to your team, the grand jury, and Congress.
A number of persons that we interviewed in our investigation, it turns out, did lie.
Mike Flynn lied.
He was convicted of lying, yes.
George Papadopoulos was convicted of lying.
True.
Paul Manafort was convicted of lying.
True.
Paul Manafort was, in fact, went so far as to encourage other people to lie.
That is accurate.
Manafort's deputy Rick Gates lied.
That is accurate.
Michael Cohen, the president's lawyer, was indicted for lying.
True.
He lied to stay on message with the president.
Allegedly by him.
And when Donald Trump called your investigation a witch hunt, that was also false, was it not?
I'd like to think it is.
Well, your investigation is not a witch hunt, is it?
It's not a witch hunt.
When the president said the Russian interference was a hoax, that was false, wasn't it?
True.
When he said it publicly, it was false?
He did say publicly that it was false, yes.
And when he told it to Putin, that was false too, wasn't it?
That I'm not familiar with.
When the president said he had no business dealings with Russia, that was false, wasn't it?
I'm not going to go into the details of the report along those lines.
When the president said he had no business dealings with Russia, in fact, he was seeking to build a Trump Tower in Moscow, was he not?
There are some questions on when this was accomplished.
You would consider a $1 billion deal to build a tower in Moscow to be business dealings with Dr. Mueller? In short, your investigation found evidence that Russia wanted to help Trump win the election, right?
And generally, that would be accurate.
Russia informed campaign officials of that?
I'm not certain to what conversation you're referring to.
Well, through an intermediary, it informed Papadopoulos that they could help with the anonymous release of stolen emails?
Accurate.
Russia committed federal crimes in order to help Donald Trump?
When you're talking about computer crimes charged in our case, absolutely.
Campaign officials built their strategy, their messaging strategy around those stolen documents?
Generally, that's true.
And then they lied to cover it up?
Generally, that's true.
Thank you, Mr. News.
Generally,
thank you.
That's true, he said.
As a former FBI director, you'd agree that the FBI is the world's most capable law enforcement agency?
I would say yes.
The FBI claims the counterintelligence investigation of the Trump campaign began on July 31st, 2016. But in fact, it began before that. In June 2016, before the investigation officially opened, Trump campaign associates Carter Page and Stephen Miller, a current Trump advisor, were invited to attend a symposium at Cambridge University in July 2016. Your office, however, did not investigate who was responsible for inviting these Trump associates to this symposium. Your investigators also failed to interview Stephen Schrage, an American citizen who helped organize the event and invited Carter Page to it. Is that correct?
Can you repeat the question?
Whether or not you interviewed Stephen Schrage, who organized the Cambridge.
In those areas, I'm going to stay away from.
The first Trump associate to be investigated was General Flynn. Many of the allegations against him stem from false media reports that he had an affair with a Cambridge academic, Svetlana Lokova, and that Lokova was a Russian spy. Some of these allegations were made public in a 2017 article written by British intelligence historian Christopher Andrew. The report fails to reveal how or why Andrew and his collaborator, Richard Dearlove, former head of Britain's MI6, spread these allegations. And you failed to interview Svetlana Lokova about these matters. Is that correct?
I'm not going to get into those matters to which you refer.
You had a team of 19 lawyers, 40 agents, and an unlimited budget, correct, Mr. Mueller?
I would not say we had an unlimited budget.
Let's continue with the the opening of the investigation, supposedly on July 31st, 2016. The investigation was not opened based on an official product from Five Eyes Intelligence, but based on a rumor conveyed by Alexander Downer. On volume 1, page 89, your report describes him blandly as a representative of a foreign government. But he was actually a long-time Australian politician, not a military or intelligence official, who had previously arranged a $25 million donation to the Clinton Foundation and has previous ties to Dearlove. So Downer conveys a rumor he supposedly heard about a conversation between Papadopoulos and Joseph Mifsud. James Comey has publicly called Mifsud a Russian agent, yet your report does not refer to Mifsud as a Russian agent. Mifsud has extensive contacts with Western governments and the FBI. For example, there is a recent photo of him standing next to Boris Johnson, the new Prime Minister of Great Britain.
Enemy team has reached exfil with the
What we're trying to figure out here, Mr. Mueller, is if our NATO allies or Boris Johnson has been compromised. So we're trying to figure out, Comey says Mifsud is a Russian agent, you do not. So do you stand by what's in the report?
I stand by that which is in the report, and not so necessarily with that which is not in the report.
I want to return to Mr. Downer. He denies that Papadopoulos mentioned anything to him about Hillary Clinton's emails, and in fact, Mifsud denies mentioning to them that's Papadopoulos. He denies that Papadopoulos mentioned anything to him about Hillary Clinton's emails. And in fact, Mifsud denies mentioning them to Papadopoulos in the first place. So how does the FBI know to continually ask Papadopoulos about Clinton's emails for the rest of 2016? Even more strangely, your sentencing memo on Papadopoulos blames him for hindering the FBI's ability to potentially detain or arrest Mifsud. But the truth is, Mifsud waltzed in and out of the United States in December 2016. The U.S. media could find him, the Italian press found him, and he's a supposed Russian agent at the epicenter of the purported collusion conspiracy. He's the guy who knows about Hillary Clinton's emails that the Russians have. But the FBI failed to question him for a half a year after officially opening the investigation. And then according to Volume 1, page 193 of your report, once Mifsud finally was questioned, he made false statements to the FBI. But you declined to charge him. Is that correct? You did not indict Mr. Mifsud?
I'm not going to speak to the series of happenings as you articulate them.
But you did not indict Mr. Mifsud. The gentleman has expired.
Pardon?
You did not indict Mr. Mifsud.
True.
Mr. Himes.
Director Mueller, thank you for your lifetime of service to this country, and thank you for your perseverance and patience today. Director, your report opens with two statements of remarkable clarity and power. The first statement is one that is, as of today, not acknowledged by the President of the United States, and that is, quote, the Russian government interfered in the 2016 presidential election in sweeping and systematic fashion. The second statement remains controversial amongst members of this body. Same page on your report, and I quote, the Russian government perceived it would benefit from a Trump presidency and worked to secure that outcome. Do I have that statement right?
I believe so.
Director Mueller, this attack on our democracy involved, as you said, two operations. First, a social media disinformation campaign. This was a targeted campaign to spread false information on places like Twitter and Facebook. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Facebook estimated, as per your report, that the Russian fake images reached 126 million people. Is that correct?
I believe that's a summary report.
Director, who did the Russian social media campaign ultimately intend to benefit? Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump? Donald Trump. The second operation,
Let me just say Donald Trump, but there were instances where Hillary Clinton was subject to much the same behavior.
the second operation in the Russian attack was a scheme, what we call the hack and dump, to steal and release hundreds of thousands of emails from the Democratic Party and the Clinton campaign. Is that a fair summary?
That is.
Did your investigation find that the releases of the hacked emails were strategically timed to maximize impact on the election?
I'd have to refer you to our report on that question.
Page 36, I quote, the release of the documents was designed in time to interfere with the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Mr. Mueller, which presidential candidate was Russia's hacking and dumping operation designed to benefit? Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump?
Mr. Trump.
Mr. Mueller, is it possible that this sweeping and systematic effort by Russia actually had an effect on the outcome of the presidential election?
Those issues are being, or have been, investigated by other entities.
126 million Facebook impressions, fake rallies, attacks on Hillary Clinton's health. Would you rule out that it might have had some effect on the election?
I'm not going to speculate.
Mr. Mueller, your report describes a third avenue of attempted Russian interference. That is the numerous links and contacts between the Trump campaign and individuals tied to the Russian government. Is that correct?
Could you repeat that question?
describes what's called a third avenue of Russian interference, and that's the links and contacts between the Trump campaign and individuals tied to the Russian government. Let's bring up slide 1, which is about George Papadopoulos, and it reads, on May 6, 2016, 10 days after that meeting with Mifsud, much discussed today, Papadopoulos suggested to a representative of a foreign government that the Trump campaign had received indications from the Russian government that it could assist the campaign through the anonymous release of information that would be damaging to Hillary Clinton. And Director, that's exactly what happened 2 months later, is it not?
Well, I can speak to the excerpt that you have on the screen and it's accurate from the report, but not the second half of your question.
Well, the second half, just to refer to page 6 of the report, is that on July 22nd, through WikiLeaks, thousands of these emails that were stolen by the Russian government appeared, correct? That's on page 6 of the report. This is the WikiLeaks posting of those emails.
I can't find it quickly, but please continue.
Okay. So just to be clear, before the public or the FBI ever knew, the Russians previewed for a Trump campaign official, George Papadopoulos, that they had stolen emails that they could release anonymously to help Donald Trump and hurt Hillary Clinton. Is that correct?
I'm not going to speak to that.
Director, rather than report this contact with Joseph Mifsud and the notion that there was dirt that the campaign could use, rather than report that to the FBI that I think most of my constituents would expect an individual to do, Papadopoulos in fact lied about his Russian contacts to you. Is that not correct?
True.
We have an election coming up in 2020, Director. If a campaign receives an offer of dirt from a foreign individual or a government, generally speaking, should that campaign report those contacts?
Should be. It can be, depending on the circumstances of the crime.
I will yield back the balance of the time.
Mr. Conway. Thank you. Mr. Mueller, did anyone ask you to exclude anything from your report that you felt should have been in the report?
I don't think so, but it's not a small report.
But no one asked you specifically to exclude something that you believe should have been in there?
Not that I can recall, no.
I yield the balance of my time, Mr. Rector. Thank you.
Thank the gentleman for yielding. Good afternoon, Director Mueller. In your May 29th press conference, and again in your opening remarks this morning, you made it pretty clear you wanted the special counsel report to speak for itself. You said at your press conference that that was the office's final position, and we will not comment on any other conclusions or hypotheticals about the president. Now, you spent the last few hours of your life from Democrats trying to get you to answer all kinds of hypotheticals about the president, and I expect that it may continue for the next few hours of your life. I think you've stayed pretty much true to what your intent and desire was, but I guess regardless of that, the special counsel's office is closed and it has no continuing jurisdiction or authority, so what would be your authority or jurisdiction for adding new conclusions or determinations to the special counsel's written report?
As to the latter, I don't know or expect a change in the conclusions that we included in our report.
So to that point, you addressed one of the issues that I needed to, which was from your testimony this morning, which some construed as a change to the written report. You talked about the exchange that you had with Congressman Liu. I wrote it down a little bit different. I want to ask you about it so that the record's perfectly clear. I reported that he asked you, quote, the reason you did not indict Donald Trump is because of the OLC opinion stating you cannot indict a sitting president, to which you responded, that is correct. That response is inconsistent. I think you'll agree with your written report. I want to be clear that it is not your intent to change your written report. It is your intent to clarify the record today.
As I started today, this afternoon, and added either a footnote or an endnote, what I wanted to clarify is the fact that we did not make any determination with regard to culpability in any way. We did not start that process down the road.
Terrific. Thank you for clarifying the record. A stated purpose of your appointment as special counsel was to ensure a full and thorough investigation of the Russian government efforts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election. As part of that full and thorough investigation, what determination did the special counsel office make about whether the Steele dossier was part of the Russian government efforts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election?
Again, when it comes to Mr. Steele, I defer to the Department of Justice.
Well, first of all, Director, I very much agree with your determination that Russia's efforts were sweeping and systematic. I think it should concern every American. That's why I want to know just how sweeping and systematic those efforts were. I want to find out if Russia interfered with our election by providing false information through sources to Christopher Steele about a Trump conspiracy that you determined didn't exist.
Again, I'm not going to discuss the issues with regard to Mr. Steele. And in terms of a portrayal of the conspiracies, we returned 2 indictments in the computer crimes arena, one GRU and another active measures, in which we lay out in excruciating detail what occurred in those 2 rather large conspiracies.
I agree with respect to that, but why this is important is an application and 3 renewal applications were submitted by the United States government to spy or surveil on Trump campaign Carter associate, or Carter Page, and on all 4 occasions, the United States government submitted the Steele dossier as a central piece of evidence with respect to that. Now, the basic premise of the dossier, as you know, was that there was a well-developed conspiracy of cooperation between the Trump campaign and the Russian government, but the special counsel investigation didn't establish any conspiracy, correct?
Well, what I can tell you is that the events that you are characterizing here now is part of another matter that is being handled by the Department of Justice.
But you did not establish any conspiracy, much less a well-developed one.
Again, I pass on answering that question.
The special counsel did not charge Carter Page with anything, correct?
Special counsel did not.
My time has expired. I yield back. Ms. Sewell.
Director Mueller, I'd like to turn your attention to the June 9th, 2016 Trump Tower meeting. Slide 2, which should be on the screen now, is part of an email chain between Donald Trump Jr. and a publicist representing the son of a Russian oligarch. The email exchange ultimately led to the now infamous June 9th, 2016 meeting. The email from the publicist to Donald Trump Jr. reads in part, "The Crown Prosecutor of Russia offered to provide the Trump campaign with some official documents and information that would incriminate Hillary and her dealings with Russia and is a part of Russia and its government's support of Mr. Trump." In this email, Donald Trump Jr. is being told that the Russian government wants to pass along information which would hurt Hillary Clinton and help Donald Trump. Is that correct? Now, Trump Jr.'s response to that email is slide 3. He said, and I quote, "If it is what you say, I love it, especially later in the summer." Then Donald Jr. Invited senior campaign officials Paul Manafort and Jared Kushner to the meeting, did he not? This email exchange is evidence of an offer of illegal assistance, is it not?
Adopt that characterization.
But isn't it against the law for a presidential campaign to accept anything of value from a foreign government?
Generally speaking, yes, but generally the cases are unique.
Well, you say in page 184 in volume 1 that the federal campaign finance law broadly prohibits foreign nationals from making contributions, etc. And then you say that foreign nationals may not make a contribution or donation of money or anything of value. It says clearly in the report itself.
Thank you.
Now, let's turn to what actually happened at the meeting. When Donald Trump Jr. and the others got to the June 9th meeting, they realized that the Russian delegation didn't have the promised quote-unquote dirt. In fact, they got upset about that, did they not?
Generally, yes.
You say in volume 1, page 118, that Trump Jr. asked, what are we doing here? What do they have on Clinton? And during the meeting, Kushner actually texts Manafort saying it was, quote, a waste of time, end quote. Is that correct?
I believe it's in the report along the lines you specify.
So to be clear, top Trump campaign officials learned that Russia wanted to help Donald Trump's campaign by giving him dirt on his opponent. Trump Jr. said he loved it. Then he and senior officials held a meeting with the Russians to try to get that Russian help. But they were disappointed because the dirt wasn't as good as they had hoped. So to the next step, did anyone, to your knowledge, in the Trump campaign ever tell the FBI of this offer?
I don't believe so.
Did Donald Trump Jr. tell the FBI that they received an offer of help from the Russians?
That's about all I'm saying on this aspect of it.
Wouldn't it be true, sir, that if they had reported it to the FBI or anyone in that campaign during the course of your 2-year investigation, you would have uncovered such a report?
I would hope, yes.
Yes. Sir, is it not the responsibility of political campaigns to inform the FBI if they receive information from a foreign government?
I would think that that's something they should do.
Well, not only did the campaign not tell the FBI, they sought to hide the existence of the June 9th meeting for over a year. Is that not correct?
On the general characterization, I would question it. If you're referring to later an initiative that flowed from the media, then...
No, what I'm suggesting is you said in talking to page 5, on several occasions the president directed aides not to publicly disclose the email setting up the June 9th meeting.
That's right.
Thanks. Sir, given this illegal assistance by Russians, you chose, even given that, you did not charge Donald Trump Jr. or any of the other senior officials with conspiracy, is that right?
Correct.
And while
when you're talking about other individuals, you're talking about the attendees.
Yes, that's right.
That's
right.
Accurate.
So, Mr. Mueller, even though you didn't charge them with conspiracy, don't you think the American people would be concerned that these 3 senior campaign officials eagerly sought foreign adversaries' help to win elections? And don't you think that reporting that is important, that we don't set a precedent for future elections?
I can't accept that kind of characterization.
Well, listen, I think that it seems like a betrayal of American values to me, sir, that someone would, if not being criminal, is definitely unethical and wrong. And I would think that we would not want to set a precedent that political campaigns should not divulge information if it's foreign government's assistance. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Turner. Mr. Mueller, I have your opening statement, and in the beginning of your opening statement, you indicate that pursuant to Justice Department regulations, that you submitted a confidential report to the Attorney General at the conclusion of the investigation. What I'd like you to confirm is the report that you did, that is the subject matter of this hearing, was to the Attorney General.
Yes.
Now, you also state in this opening statement that you threw overboard the word collusion because it's not a legal term. You would not conclude because collusion is not a legal term.
Well, it depends on how you want to use the word. In the general parlance, people can think of it that way, but if you're talking about the criminal statute arena, you can't, because it's much more aptly and accurately described as conspiracy.
Right, so your words are it's not a legal term, so you didn't put it in your conclusion, correct? That's what you're correct. Mr. Mueller, I want to talk about your powers and authorities. Now, the Attorney General in the appointment order gave you powers and authorities that reside in the Attorney General. Now, the Attorney General has no ability to give you powers and authority greater than the powers and authority of the Attorney General, correct?
I think that.
Mr. Mueller, I want to focus on one word in your report. It's the second to the last word in the report. It's exonerate. The report states, accordingly, while this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it does not exonerate him. Now, in the judiciary hearing, in your prior testimony, you've already agreed with Mr. Radcliffe that exonerate is not a legal term, but there is not a legal test for this. So I have a question for you, Mr. Mueller. Mr. Mueller, does the Attorney General have the power or authority to exonerate? And what I'm putting up here is the United States Code. This is where the Attorney General gets his power, and the Constitution, and the annotated cases of these, which we've searched. We even went to your law school, because I went to Case Western, but I thought maybe your law school teaches it differently. And we got the criminal law textbook from your law school. Mr. Mueller, nowhere in these, because we had them scanned, is there a process or description on exonerate? There's no office of exoneration at the Attorney General's office. There's no certificate at the bottom of his desk. Mr. Mueller, would you agree with me the Attorney General does not have the power to exonerate.
I'm going to pass on that.
Why?
Because it embroils us in a legal discussion. I'm not prepared to do a legal discussion in that arena.
Well, Mr. Mueller, you would not disagree with me when I say that there is no place that the Attorney General has the power to exonerate if he's not been given that authority. You would not.
Yeah, I'm not going to. I take your question.
Great. Well, the one thing that I guess is that the Attorney General probably knows that he can't exonerate either. And that's the part that kind of confuses me. Because if the Attorney General doesn't have the power to exonerate, then you don't have the power to exonerate, and I believe he knows he doesn't have the power to exonerate. And so this is the part that I don't understand. If your report is to the Attorney General, and the Attorney General doesn't have the power to exonerate, and he knows that you do not have that power, you don't have to tell him that you're not exonerating the President. He knows this already. So then that kind of changed the context of the report.
No, we included in the report for exactly that reason. He may not know it, and he should know it.
So you believe that the Attorney Bill Barr believes that somewhere in the hallways of the Department of Justice there's an office of exoneration? Well, I believe he knows, and I don't believe you put that in there for Mr. Barr. I think you put that in there for exactly what I'm going to discuss next, and that is, so the Washington Post yesterday, when speaking of your report, the article said Trump could not be exonerated of trying to obstruct the investigation itself. Trump could not be exonerated. Now that statement is correct, Mr. Mueller, isn't it? And that no one can be exonerated. The reporter wrote this, that this reporter can't be exonerated. Mr. Mueller, you can't be exonerated. In fact, in our criminal justice system, there is no power or authority to exonerate. Now, this is my concern with Mueller. This is the headline on all of the news channels while you were testifying today. Mueller, Trump was not exonerated. Now, Mr. Mueller, what you know is that this can't say Mueller exonerated Trump, because you don't have the power or authority to exonerate Trump. You have no more power to declare him exonerated than you have the power to declare him Anderson Cooper. So the problem that I have here is that since there's no one in the criminal justice system that has that power, the president pardons, he doesn't exonerate. Courts and juries don't declare innocent, they declare not guilty. They don't even declare exoneration. The statement about exoneration is misleading, and it's meaningless, and it colors this investigation one word out of the entire portion of your report, and it's a meaningless word that has no legal meaning, and it has colored your entire report. The gentleman has expired. Mr. Carson.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Director Mueller, for your years of service to our country. I want to look more closely, sir, at Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort, an individual who I believe betrayed our country, who lied to a grand jury, who tampered witnesses, and who repeatedly tried to use his position with the Trump campaign to make more money. Let's focus on the betrayal and greed. Your investigation, sir, found a number of troubling contacts between Mr. Manafort and Russian individuals during and after the campaign. Is that right, sir? In addition to the June 9th meeting just discussed, Manafort also met several times with a man named Konstantin Klimek, who the FBI accepts to have ties with Russian intel agencies. Is that right, sir?
Right.
In fact, Mr. Manafort didn't just meet with him. He shared private Trump campaign polling information with this man linked to Russian intelligence. Is that right, sir?
That is correct.
And in turn, the information was shared with a Russian oligarch tied to Vladimir Putin. Is that right, sir? Director Mueller, meeting with him wasn't enough. Sharing internal polling information wasn't enough. Mr. Manafort went so far as to offer this Russian oligarch tied to Putin a private briefing on the campaign. Is that right, sir?
Yes, sir.
And finally, Mr. Manafort also discussed internal campaign strategy on 4 battleground states, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Minnesota, with the Russian intelligence-linked individual. Did he not, sir?
And that's reflected in the report as for the items you listed previously.
Director Mueller, based on your decades of years of experience at the FBI, would you agree, sir, that it creates a national security risk when a presidential campaign chairman shares private polling information on the American people, private political strategy related to winning the votes of the American people, and private information about American battle